Great Grand Rising, everyone. Great Grand Rising. This is a new thunder for Inner Live. And just before we start, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please hit like and subscribe and also share. The information we're going to be talking about today is extremely important because it's about the so-called African Americans, Blacks, Negroes here in the United States. And it also may apply to where you are in your neck of the woods in this world. And it's a reason why the people here in the United States, the Black people here in the United States, have lost their identity, aren't able to get ahead in their communities. They put up thousands of churches sometimes in neighborhoods, and the neighborhoods always seem to go down and not look like they're doing anything for anyone. No matter how much and how often we try to improve our politics, support political agendas such as the Democrats, Republicans, the liberals, communists, any kind of political situation that you might think that you belong in. There's reasons why none of these systems are actually working in the so-called Black community. As I call them, as the original Indigenous community, but the African American community. There's a reason why we are unable, the Black people of the United States and their communities are able to move forward, combine themselves, unify. And a lot of this has to do with how the society in its inception, since 1492 and before, has come up and affected the ability of the people to be able to think, be themselves, understand who and what they are. So one of the things that we do here at NR, again, it's a lot of political stuff. We do a lot of community organization and organizing, reestablishing communities, going into community nations. But none of these things would be ever successful. I'll give you an example. What we're talking about is structural abuse. In another video we're going to be talking about structural violence. And structural abuse is the process by which an individual is dealt with unfairly by a system of harm in ways that the person cannot protect themselves against and or cannot deal with, cannot break out of, cannot mobilize against, cannot seek justice for, and cannot redress or get redress, cannot avoid and cannot reverse, and cannot change. So understand the system that you're in right now. You're being affected by structural abuse. This is the reason why your communities are not getting healthier, they're not getting better, and it seems as though things are just getting worse. And usually structural abuse comes about by war, right? Because it's an imposing of a system on another group of people in order for them to be weighed down and so heavy in that system that they can't have any redress for anything that they're doing. So no matter what you do, and the example is that I work with one of the school systems in Long Island, New York, and actually a few school systems in Long Island, New York. And now every one of those school systems, they have a board of directors. And all the school systems is governed by the state of New York. So, no matter where you are, it's always governed by some sort of a political system that is over you. And this is where we get the structural abuse type situation. Because every system contains at least one level at which structural abuse occurs. When the actions of the system takes over the actions of the individual within the system to create structures by which abuse of the other occurs. And what does that mean? That means when I was working with the school systems, the Roosevelt school system in Long Island, New York, I was actually at the tail end voted onto the school board to try to help prevent all the things that were going on. So when in your society and in your communities, you're dealing with the governmental factors in the system and you begin to start making headway in your communities, in your school systems, and it seems as though, like, you might be buying more computers, you might be actually getting books that are up to date. Kids in every classroom actually might be learning the actual math that might be up to date for this time and age, etc. When it seems like you might be doing really well, all of a sudden the government swoops in and prevents the whole entire thing from getting any better. They begin to start putting financial constraints on the schools. They begin to start putting all kinds of restraints that will cause the system to collapse. And then they publicize it and make it seem like as though it's the people in the area themselves that are unable to govern themselves. And then they take the school system away and then possibly even make it a charter school. Government takes it over, privatizes it, puts it into the hands of people who are not of the community. And there's nothing the community in itself can do in order for it to be able to get out. So that's part of structural abuse. That's all a part of the system. You're not being able to be able to control. So there are three kinds of structural abuses. One's imposed interference within individuals' personal space, time, and energy and control. Normal interference with the individual's ability to control the relationships and their constructions and structures around them. Missing connections that harm the physical, mental, and emotional energies, strips them of a personal overprotecting period, thus causing damage to both the relationship and the physical and emotional well-being of the person being kept waiting. Right? Structural abuse is indirect and exploits the victims on an emotional, mental, psychological level. It manifests itself in specific situations within each cultural, social, corporate, and family framework. So it goes in really deep. In terms of how these structural abuses really impact your entire community. And this is one of the reasons why, what the Indigenous nations of North America is doing is going into neighborhoods and helping them to understand their structural abuse and why their community is unable to be able to function in the manner that it is, why everybody's acting and behaving like crabs in a barrel, no matter how enlightened, how educated, or how rich somebody might be, or even how poor, right? So structural abuse is also called social abuse. It has four permanent impacts upon the societies or communities subject to it. And this is what they've done all throughout the quote unquote Black American history, original Indigenous being history, as they began to start changing their identity from the Indigenous to what they call American Indian, to what they call Aboriginal, to what they call Negro, to now what they call Black, and then into Black American, right? And any other so-called name in between. So structural abuse also is called social abuse. It has four permanent impacts upon the communities subjected to it. Cognitive abuse, by which the meaning of the word is changed forever. Sexual abuse, in which the person's identity is changed for life. Emotional abuse, by which the capacity to function in a human manner is impaired. In a human manner. So there's so many of us that's having so much sexual identity problems right now. Because of the jail system, because of all the programming that's going on our TVs and movies that we watch. We're having self-identifying problems in terms of the way we look, our skin color, our hair. For a long time, there's a lot of people who are trying to conk their hair and make it all straight and look like the surviving people that are actually controlling their society. They're trying to blend in and do everything that they can. And that, again, that goes into a whole social, psychological situation where it destroys the mentality, and then it also destroys the succeeding generations because they're watching the generation doing what they're not supposed to be doing. And again, it's facilitated by a lot of the people on TV, a lot of our entertainers, singers, etc. And it impounds the social abuse and the structural abuse that's going on all around us, right? It goes into creating emotional abuse by which the capacity to function in a human manner is completely impaired. And then it's also physical. Now, this is a lot of reason why we have a lot of physical issues in our families. There's a lot of physical issues with our children, with our relationships, a lot of physical issues in our communities. This is why people are being gang raped, shot, drive-bys, all different types of things that deal with physical activity of harming another person within your community, within your family, right? So that physical abuse that is imposed upon the individual or group by a person, social, commercial, cultural system of dominance. An example is how a structural level structural abuse are accepted by the community is where a political journalist in Australia presented a few of the day's work within Australian Parliament in 2011. During a 1-minute presentation consisting of 18 points, she began 8 new points with the word now. And a fixation cure the view is forgotten about. So one of the things in terms of what we're trying to say is that structural abuse goes into your whole entire political system. And when it goes into your political system, no matter who is representing you in this system, they are now part of the system and part of the purpose to continue that structural, social, cognitive abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and physical abuse upon you. So it is the system upon which you are in, that your community is in, which your family is embedded in, can't get out of. You have absolutely no control whatsoever over your lives, over your feelings, over your relationships, over your children, right? Because as you know, in the foster care child abuse system, anybody can be accused of child abuse, right? So you got that fear over your head. At any given moment, somebody can come into your house and take away your children. You have no rights whatsoever under the system in the way that it is, right? And all of this goes into the different classes of structural abuse, right? And it's really difficult for us to understand why we pray so much and why we, try to gather community meetings and meet this here, meet there, and, have all our political representatives and all that stuff come. All of those people are part of the system and part of the structural abuse meant to genocide us all. And that's what the system is. For Black people here in the United States, the system, in its very design, the Constitution wasn't written for the original indigenous being. It wasn't written for quote unquote Black people in the United States. This is the reason why, again, it's embarrassing to say this to the world, but the Black people here in the United States has a Voting Rights Act created in the 60s to protect them so that they have the proper right to vote. And it was never ratified to become part of a constitutional amendment. It became an act that has to be voted on about every 20 years or so. It's embarrassing. Martin Luther King said that a fundamental right of freedom in a country is them to be able to vote for their representatives. And we don't have that fundamental freedom. We don't have it. But that's going into the constitutional area, and that's a story for another day. So, with these 3 classes, these 3 kinds of structural abuse, imposed interference with individuals' personal space, normal interference with individuals' ability to control their relationships and their constructions around them, missing connections that harness the physical, mental, and emotional energies of a person over a protected period of time, thus causing damage to both the relationship and the physical and emotional well-being of the person being kept and waiting, right? So it's very, very, very difficult for you and your community members to be able to get together, develop a plan, and work within the system to get yourself out of it. So structural abuse is also called societal abuse, as I was telling you that. And there are some examples: standing over another in domination, in a dominating fashion. The whole entire religious system, political system, education system does exactly that. The police system is a militarized um, system to keep you under control. I was taught in one class in college that police actually really protect one type of society while they go after another type of society. Calling people unkind and names, and they call you nigger, they call you this, they call you that, they call you lazy, right? And then you begin to start behaving in those connotations, because the more you begin to start focusing on something, the more that structural abuse, the social abuse begins to start permeating in the mind. And when it starts permeating in the mind, what happens is that people begin to start acting out on it. And then when they're acting out on it and they're thinking this and they're visualizing this, and it's being said to them all the time that they're nothing, they're no good, they're gangsters, they're gangbangers, right? The whores, the prostitutes, right? Then you have the movies that come out and they give you a physical representation of all this stuff, and they begin to start acting out in your community even more. And then they begin to start imposing laws and all that other type of stuff that actually puts more of a constraint on your society, creating the structural abuse and the social abuse even more. So that's why when it says standing over another in domination, in a dominating manner, that's part of the structural abuse. It's part of the system. Calling people names, harassing them, looking at them in stores, right? Never being treated right on your job. Never ever feeling comfortable in a system that is supposed to be free for everybody. Snitching belongs to another, refusing to return them immediately. So you're snatching people's identity, right? Snatching their emotions and the things that belong to them, taking something away, not returning it to you. And then when they do return it to you, like they snatched away your name of being an original indigenous being. They snatched away your real name. They snatched it away. And then they don't return it to you immediately. So when they gave it back to you, they gave it back to you as Negro. Then they snatched that away. Then they returned it back as black. And then they snatched that away. And then they gave you the name African American Conquered People of America. All of this is part of the structural abuse and controlling the mindset of the African American, the black person here in the United States. Right? Taking things away, right? Being late to respond to the issues in your community. How often does that happen? That's another form of social structural abuse. And the reason why we're unable to get ahead, because every time that every time that the Black American has a problem, what they do is take their problem to the system. The very system that is causing the structural abuse, the very system that is designed to keep them down in the first place, the very system that makes sure that every single thing that they do has a quota and a percentage that's below and beneath everyone else. Our education rate is lower. Our unemployment rate is lower. Our health care is lower. The communities in which we live in, they consider that lower communities. And there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is structural abuse. They, again, another thing about structural abuse is when, you're trying to explain yourself, you're trying to get help, and the society or the politicians talk over you. Go to a community meeting that a politician is having. Go to a community meeting. Go to a town meeting. Begin to start explaining who and what you are, and start explaining the problem that you're having in your system. They'll give you about 2 or 3 minutes to tell you what they say, what you got to say, and then what they'll do is they begin to start talking over you. They start talking down to you. They start making light of everything that you're saying. And this is another reason why. Then they respond late to you and give you a way of trying to get out of the problems that you're having in society, which is never a fix. That's the reason why the community never gets better. And then all of a sudden you find out they're moving other people into your community and all your people are moving out. And you don't really know where they're going. Next thing you know, you can't even rent an apartment. You can't do anything because the people that are there now, they don't look like you anymore. And then you ask yourself, why? How did this all happen? And you're feeling low. So amongst the unemployment, the health issues, the street issues, the police issues, the governmental forces issues, people getting killed on the streets, drive-bys, you'll never feel safe and secure in your community because of structural abuse. That's what you're going through. And it's a shame because structural abuse indicators include the inability of an outsider to make contact with a personal level with people who work with an organization. Cafe meetings turn discussions into undesirable events, while lack of agendas. High performance meetings create high-ended levels of feeling threatened, which impacts on how such meetings are approached, being kept held to a music blaring down the earpiece of structural abuse, because by listening for the resumption of the discussion, there is no escape from the sound of disrespect of your government officials and the society that doesn't want you to be a part of it anyway. So structural abuse, again, we talked about the political system as we begin to start ending this, because I want to end this in about 25 minutes. Making promises that are not kept is a category of political structural abuse. Unkept promises, fixated by expectations that people create from such promises. Expectations that create physical arousal, states a physical, emotional, and intellectual behavioral mindset by which to accommodate the fulfillment of those promises. When those visualizations of the lecture and its motivations of personal responsiveness is not satisfied in a timely and appropriate manner, the results are extended period of psychological arousal, which can turn into stress and emotional depression over time. Hence, the anger response to the electorate is an unkept promise of politicians, as well as the frustrated responses of victims of abuse, of court processes, protective orders, to the abuse of dissension exhibited by the manifestation of the court and law enforcement officers who can claim to be acting under authority of the color of law. And what that means is that every time your politicians come out there, they say all kinds of stuff. And that's why I said, I don't care what color they are. If they're part of the system, they are part of the structural abuse. Part of the structural abuse. They will destroy you, rape you for your money, rape your mindset, steal the energy out of your soul and take it to someplace else. And they don't care because they're part of the system. Their job as an elected representative of this system that you're in is to keep you down and destroy you. That's why community controls and functions also is a cause of structural abuse. All categories of structural abuse involve the manipulation, control of time, energy, focus, and connection between people, groups, and organizations in the service of one side and to deserve the other. Now, did you get that right? Because you're joining a lot of these groups out there that promise to get you all kinds of reparations and this, that, and the other thing, but they're all combining themselves with the organization, with the governmental structure, with the system that is down there perpetrating a fraud because it's meant to genocide you. And like I said, this can just be about anywhere. You have to look at your whole entire thing. But I'm talking specifically now about the Black African American, so-called African American, so-called Black person, the original indigenous being here in the Americas, North America. Your community is sick. Your community is suffering from psychological abuse. Your community is suffering from social and structural abuse. And dealing with such structural abuse is the only way that you can deal with abuse is that you have to get out of the abusive situation. It's the only way you can deal with it. Now, if you're of the system and can't get out of it, they'll tell you to talk to therapists and this, that, and the other thing. But that's why we're here. Inner is here because what Inner does, we come into your community and we talk to you and give you a framework upon which you can get out of the system that you're in that is downright ready to destroy you. That's what we do. This is what structural abuse is all about. And you need a system to be able to get out of it. At this point right now, you can't go to the UN. You can't go to the United States government. You can't do anything like that. We have to rely on yourselves in order for you to be able to rise yourselves up and take yourself out of the situation. And you can only do that if we all have a united front line, linking our communities together in a fashion as to where we can control our own politics, have ourselves represented by our own political system, and creating a historical council where we can begin to start disseminating the information that we're all getting in and creating a canon of our own history and sciences to enter into a new educational program. And this is the reason why, in order for you to be able to get out of the structural abuse and to save your communities, to save your children, to save your babies that are just being born, we have to reestablish our mindsets to whom what we are as beings of people. We're at war. We're at war, and we have absolutely no system to be able to combat it. I mean, we got a lot of organizations out there. But all these organizations are telling you to go and beg in their courts, beg in their world, beg in their system. The system that had genocided already over 100 million of our family members. There's a good chance that you're living on top of a mass grave right now if you're in any one of these major cities listening to me today. Thank God for all you guys that are listening. So that's structural abuse and the reason why your communities cannot get ahead. And I'm specifically talking about the quote unquote Black African American person who's lost their identity, don't know who they are, don't know where they're going, and always begging some idiot to get them out of the trouble that they're in. What did God tell Moses' successor when he was all frightened and scared to death for you religious people? He told them that you will make your own way prosperous. I'll go before you. I'll go before you. and I'll straighten the road out for you, but you will make your own way prosperous. It is through your deeds. If you're a Muslim, it is through your deeds and your actions that are going to be the litmus test upon which your soul will be judged on. And in order for us to be able to rise up out of this, we have to understand that we are in a structural abuse type situation. This is a new thunder. And I'll be happy to see you out there as we're on our community reestablishment tour. You'll see these things all around the place pretty soon. I'll put it that way, right? A community reestablishment tour. It's a big thing. It's the largest community building project the world has ever seen. And we're serious about it. No, we're not trying to upsert the American government. We're not trying to destroy their system. What we're doing is recreating our system in our neighborhoods and coming to a real understanding of who we are as physical beings on this earth. As physical beings on this earth. So you get a little bit more of this from me because this is about structural abuse, about why our communities can never get ahead. And we'll be talking about the churches. We'll be talking about structural violence. We'll be talking about a whole lot of things in order for us to be able to make sure that as we enter out there into the communities, we're all going to be able to talk, shake hands, and create small community nations which will be able to link each other together and create a new economic system for our people and create a new political representation for our people. And they'll be able to share themselves in the Indigenous Nations of North American Congress and everything else that it has to offer. This is real. And again, we have to recreate ourselves as beings of people in order for us to be able to get out of the structural abuse. So, if you're a Caucasian, Europoid, white person, Indian, Asian, whatever the situation may be, no matter where you are from in this world, understand that we are coming to the understanding here in North America of who and what we are. And we're rising. And hopefully our condition here is going to improve immensely over the next few years. I love you all. Hope this message was very informative to you. I want to try to get more political messages out there in order for you to understand the society that you're living in. So then that way you don't think it's me. It's me. It's us. It's us as a people. Right? Lift yourselves up. Understand that you are of a great people. Understand that there are great things that are coming. Understand that you have lots of love in your heart. Understand that you have a lot to give to life, a lot to give to our society. And understand that we have a lot of great things that are coming. But we're going to have to work together. Put in the time in order for us to be very successful. As Martin Luther King, as I end, he went to the mountaintop and he said, I have seen the promised land, and we're all going to get there. So now it's time for you to put on your coats, put on some nice, comfortable shoes, maybe even put on a hat or two. Get yourself a cup of coffee or tea, because it's time for us to get up and start walking off this mountaintop and down into our promised land and out of all of this structural abuse. No matter what's going on in your life, no matter what's happening anywhere, no matter how desperate the situation may be, no matter how sad the situation may seem to you at this point in time, remember that no matter what is going on right now, you are going through the hell, you're not staying in it. So therefore, you take these as life lessons and you smile. Smile. Smile and feel good about who and what you are as a being of people, because you are beautiful. This is a new thunder. Head of state for the Indigenous Nations of North America. I love you all. And I grant you a great grand rising.